Shadows of the Scattered Library. The streets of Cairo at night were not silent. They breathed with whispers of centuries, with the faint aroma of spices, charred wood, and the river that had seen every age pass in its silted currents. I walked beside Professor Alistair Finch, careful not to stumble over loose cobblestones, careful not to draw attention to the frail, ghost-like man whose presence seemed to absorb light itself. He carried nothing but his satchel, and yet it was as if he bore the weight of all history inside it. The shadows of lanterns stretched and warped around him, as though the city itself recoiled at the knowledge he carried. "We have no time," he said, voice barely more than a rasp, yet sharp enough to cut through the night. "The conquered moves faster than ever. They know I am coming. They have always known." I had spent my life archiving documents, cataloging evidence, preserving stories for those who could not remember. But nothing in my years of careful research had prepared me for the urgency in his eyes. We paused at a corner near the river, where the lamplight flickered weakly, throwing elongated shadows across the cracked stones. Finch crouched slightly and peered at the darkness ahead, as if reading secrets written in the blackness itself. "The first fragment is in Alexandria," he whispered. "Not the library, you know. Not the ruins tourists worship. Below the surface, under streets rebuilt 1,000 times, there is a chamber untouched since the fire. The fragment we seek is older than any map, older than the city itself, and we are not alone in looking for it." I nodded, my stomach tightening. "The Concord?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he ran a thin, bony finger along the edge of the satchel. "They call themselves a scholarly order," he said finally, "but they are architects of ambition. Power born of knowledge, twisted by desire. If they find the fragment first, I cannot imagine what they will do." We moved through narrow alleyways, the air cooler now, tinged with the scent of the river. Occasionally, I glimpsed movement in the shadows, figures so quick and silent they might have been part of the night itself. Finch never faltered. He navigated the alleys with uncanny certainty, as though some unseen map guided him. Finally, we reached the port district, where shipping containers loomed like dark monoliths, and the calls of late-night workers echoed over the water. Finch paused, eyes scanning a building at the far end. It was old, abandoned, bricked over, and yet something about its angles, the way the walls leaned into one another, suggested secrets hidden beneath. "This is our entry," he said. He handed me a small key, ancient, worn smooth by centuries of handling. "Do not ask how I obtained it. Some locks are not picked by strength but by knowledge." I took it, the metal cold and heavy in my hand. The door yielded easily, as if expecting us. Inside, dust swirled in beams of moonlight that fell through cracked windows. The air smelled of mold, dry rot, and a hint of something metallic like the tang of blood long evaporated. We descended a narrow staircase into darkness, lit only by the single lantern Finch held. The stairs led to a chamber beneath the city, a place that had not felt the sun in 2,000 years. The walls were lined with stone niches, some empty, some holding fragments of ancient scrolls. Their text faded, but unmistakably older than any civilization that had survived the ages. "Here," Finch whispered, stopping before a large stone slab embedded in the floor. He pressed his palm to a carved symbol that seemed to vibrate faintly under his touch. Slowly the slab shifted, revealing a stairwell that descended even further into the heart of Alexandria's forgotten past. As we descended, the air grew colder. Each step echoed against walls that seemed too alive to be inert. I felt an energy in the stone itself, a hum beneath my feet like the pulse of a hidden world. Finch paused at a landing, turning to me with eyes that burned brighter than the lantern's flame. "The fragment," he said, "lies just beyond this corridor, the Codex of Orpheus. Its words are dangerous. They describe not just knowledge but power. Power to bend the natural order, to compel events, to shape reality itself. It was taken here for safekeeping centuries ago. Only the scattered library's loyal guardians have protected it since." I swallowed hard. "And the conquered?" They are close, he said. His voice lowered further. They are always close. If they reach it first, humanity will not survive what they intend to unleash. We reached a small chamber, circular, with walls carved in intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer in the lantern light. At the center lay a pedestal, and atop it rested a scroll, perfectly preserved, as though time itself had chosen to bow around it. Finch stepped forward, reverent and wary. As he lifted the scroll, a sudden sound stopped me, a whisper, soft, unintelligible, yet sharp as a blade. The shadows in the room shifted unnaturally, and I realized with horror that we were not alone. Figures emerged from the corners, draped in dark robes, faces obscured. Their movement was silent, deliberate. They knew we would come, Finch said, voice tight with tension. They always know. The leader of the figures stepped forward, and though his face remained in shadow, I felt a presence that commanded both fear and awe. Finch held the scroll close. I will not yield it, he said. A tense silence filled the chamber. Every instinct screamed that the confrontation would be violent, that centuries of secrecy and pursuit had all led to this single moment. Outside, the city slept, oblivious to the ancient conflict unfolding beneath its streets. I took a breath, gripping the lantern. This was no longer a story of discovery. It was a story of survival, of knowledge and power older than civilization, of guardians and hunters locked in an eternal pursuit. And I had been pulled into its center. For the first time, I understood that the fire of Alexandria had never truly ended. It lived on in fragments, in shadows, in the whispered codices of forbidden knowledge. And now, that fire had found me. The Concord approaches. The city above remained oblivious to the centuries-old war unfolding beneath its streets. But in the chamber below, the air was electric with tension. The figures surrounding us were silent, but their presence pressed against my chest like an invisible weight. Finch's hands trembled slightly as he clutched the Codex of Orpheus to his chest, his eyes never leaving the shadows that moved like living darkness. They are scouts, he whispered, voice tight. The Concord has eyes everywhere. We are not dealing with scholars or thieves. They are strategists, architects, and they bend knowledge to domination. Their reach extends across continents. I swallowed, aware of how faint my own heartbeat sounded in the thick silence. The leader stepped closer, and a metallic glint caught the lantern light, a ring inscribed with symbols that seemed older than the pyramids themselves. Finch noticed it, and a flicker of recognition crossed his gaunt face. They know the Codex's power, he said. If they take it, the balance shifts. And the fragments. Every fragment we protect becomes a target. I glanced around the chamber. The walls were etched with patterns that twisted like serpents, as though the stone itself had been alive when the library was hidden. Finch tapped the scroll gently, and the patterns seemed to shimmer, faintly responding like the heartbeat of the library itself. We had no choice. Finch motioned toward a narrow stairwell hidden behind a stone relief. We move now. They may follow, but this path is known only to the scattered library. The stairwell descended into a network of tunnels, damp and narrow, smelling of earth and dust and the faint acrid tang of something ancient. Every step echoed, every sound amplified, until it felt like the tunnels themselves were listening. I tried to focus, tried to steady my breath, but I could feel the weight of history pressing in, the knowledge that every movement was being watched, every decision measured. We emerged into a chamber filled with relics from every age, scrolls from Babylon, codices from Athens, and fragments whose origins I could not even guess. Finch set the codex down carefully on a stone pedestal, and I could see the reverence in his eyes. This was not a book. It was a key. A compass, a living memory of human ambition and knowledge. Then I heard it. A faint whisper carried on the tunnel's air, and suddenly the temperature dropped. Shadows detached themselves from the walls and converged. The Concord had followed. They know we are here, Finch said grimly, and they will not hesitate. I had seen the fire in Finch's eyes before, but now it burned with urgency. The last librarian was no longer just a keeper of secrets. He was a fugitive, a guardian in the final hours before a war over knowledge that had been centuries in the making. The first figure moved forward, robes swaying, steps silent. The lantern cast flickering shadows, making their faces impossible to see, but I could feel the intent radiating from them. Calculated, ruthless. Finch whispered a phrase under his breath in a language older than Latin. The symbols etched on the walls pulsed faintly, and for a moment I thought the shadows themselves hesitated. Then they advanced. Finch grabbed my arm. "Run!" he hissed. "Follow the tunnels. They are not all known to them." We sprinted, the codex secure against Finch's chest. The tunnels twisted and forked, and I had no idea if we were moving towards safety or deeper into danger. Somewhere behind us, a faint clatter echoed. Boots? Or something older, more patient, hunting in silence. We emerged into a cavern where the air was warmer, scented with incense and old stone. Finch stopped, breathing heavily, and pressed a finger to a wall. The Codex of Empedocles. The city above us slept, unaware that beneath its streets a war older than memory was unfolding. Finch led me through twisting tunnels, each turn more labyrinthine than the last. The walls were etched with centuries-old symbols, faintly glowing in the lantern's light, as if the stone itself remembered the secrets it had borne for millennia. "We are moving toward Istanbul," Finch said, voice low. "The next fragment, the Codex of Empedocles, is already in their hands. They have taken my daughter to read it. If they succeed, the balance shifts." I had followed scholars and historians, but never anything like this. The air grew colder with every step, and I could feel the weight of the fragments, the codices, pressing against time itself. Finch's pace never faltered. His eyes were always forward, scanning the darkness, calculating, anticipating. We emerged into a hidden chamber beneath a crumbling mosque. Its walls were lined with fragments from civilizations long gone: Babylonian tablets, Greek scrolls, Egyptian codices. Each artifact seemed to hum, vibrating faintly in rhythm with the library's pulse. Finch approached a pedestal in the center and lifted a small codex wrapped in dark velvet. "This is the Codex of Empedocles," he whispered. "Alchemy, philosophy, elemental binding. Dangerous, brilliant, and misunderstood. In the wrong hands. Catastrophic." Before I could respond, shadows moved. The conquered had found us again. Their robes whispered across the stone floor, and their leader stepped into the dim lantern light. The face was hidden, but the intent radiated. Precise, deadly, patient. "They always follow," Finch muttered. "Always." I realized then the chase was not simply about knowledge, it was about survival, about keeping history itself from being rewritten by ambition and obsession. Finch clutched the codex to his chest and spoke a word in the ancient tongue of the librarians. Symbols along the walls flared faintly, a shield of light, but only for a moment. The Concord advanced. They did not speak. Their presence was authority, command, threat. Finch grabbed my arm. "We move. Now." We fled through hidden passageways, tunnels that twisted like serpents, chambers that seemed to stretch and fold. Each step carried danger, yet every turn brought us closer to the fragments' hiding places. Finch whispered directions in a language I didn't understand, but my mind followed instinctively, guided by the urgency in his voice. Finally, we reached a chamber where the air felt alive, thick with the weight of secrets. Finch placed the codex on a stone pedestal, running his fingers along its edges. "We protect it here," he said. "Until the conquered makes their move, we are safe, if only briefly." I looked around, realizing the enormity of our task. The scattered library had survived fire, war, conquest, and time itself. And yet in every shadow, in every step, the Concord threatened to undo centuries of careful protection. Outside, faint echoes suggested they were still searching, silent but relentless. Finch pressed a finger to a symbol on the pedestal. The codex glowed faintly, as if acknowledging its guardian. "We have hours," he said. "Hours to plan, to prepare, to protect. And after that, his eyes met mine. We fight. The weight of history pressed down on me, and I realized that this war was bigger than any of us. The fragments were alive in ways that went beyond knowledge. They were keys to power, memory, and destiny itself. And now, we were their custodians. I understood then why Finch had chosen me. I was not just an archivist. I was a participant in a story older than most empires, and the Codex of Empedocles was only the beginning. As we prepared for the Concord's inevitable return, I felt the pulse of the scattered library beneath my feet, a reminder that history is never dead. It waits, patient, until someone dares to awaken it. And someone had. The final page. The air was thick with tension as Finch and I emerged from the hidden chamber into a cavern beneath Istanbul, a place untouched by sunlight or time. The walls seemed alive, etched with the whispers of centuries, carrying a faint hum that thrummed against my skull. The Codex of Empedocles rested in Finch's arms, its velvet cover absorbing the dim lantern light like a black hole. "They are here," Finch whispered, voice taut. "They always arrive when least expected. And they are faster than we imagine." I could feel it before I saw them. The Concord moving silently through the labyrinthine tunnels, their presence a living shadow. They were not ordinary pursuers. They were calculated, methodical, aware of every potential trap. I realized we were not merely fleeing. They were hunting us, the fragments, and perhaps the past itself. Finch pressed a finger to a symbol on the wall, and the stone shifted, revealing a hidden staircase spiraling upward. "The last fragment is near," he said. "And my daughter. She is the key. If they read the final page first, they will rewrite what the codices were meant to preserve." We ascended, every step echoing in the cavern as if the tunnels themselves were aware of our presence. The Concord's whispers followed us, indistinct but growing, an invisible wind of menace. Finch's hands trembled slightly as he clutched the Codex tighter. When we reached the chamber, my breath caught. It was a vast hall, lined with pedestals, each holding fragments of the scattered library. At the far end, a figure stood, a young girl, eyes wide with fear, illuminated by the lantern light, Finch's daughter. My heart pounded as I realized the stakes. "They've brought her here to read the final page," Finch whispered, barely audible. "If they succeed, the knowledge becomes a weapon beyond reckoning." Figures from the Concord emerged from the shadows, circling us with silent precision. The leader stepped forward, a glint of authority in the darkness, his robe flowing like smoke. "You cannot stop what is inevitable," he said, voice smooth and cold. "The codices belong to the world, and we will see that they are used." Finch stepped protectively in front of his daughter, eyes blazing. "They belong to no one," he replied. "They are meant to be guarded, not wielded. You cannot understand their power or their danger." Suddenly, the air in the chamber shifted. Symbols etched in stone began to glow faintly, the fragments vibrating in resonance with the Codex. It was as though the library itself was waking, recognizing its guardians and the threat posed by those who would misuse its knowledge. The Concord moved to seize the fragments. Finch raised a hand, chanting in the ancient language of the librarians. A wave of energy pulsed through the hall, throwing shadows backward, momentarily halting the intruders. The glow from the Codex intensified, bathing the chamber in an otherworldly light. "Now!" Finch shouted, and we moved toward the last pedestal, placing the Codex and other fragments in precise alignment. A low hum filled the air, vibrating in my chest, as though the library itself was acknowledging its protectors. The leader of the Concord lunged, but a force I could not see struck him back, sending him sprawling. Finch turned to me, eyes fierce. "Help me protect the last page," he said. "This is what we've been preparing for centuries." The next moments blurred. Shadows clashed, whispered threats echoed, and the very ground seemed to tremble under the power of the codices. Finch's daughter stayed close, eyes wide but resolute, as if sensing that she too had a role to play in preserving history. Finally, the Concord faltered. Their leader, realizing their advantage slipping, retreated into the darkness, their presence lingering like a threat that would never fully vanish. The hall grew quiet once more, the glow of the fragments softening. Finch sank to his knees, holding his daughter close. "It is done for now," he murmured, voice weary but filled with relief. "The fragments are safe, the library endures, and the fire of Alexandria, which was thought lost, lives on in us." I looked around the chamber, seeing the codices, fragments of civilization, knowledge, and power, all preserved through centuries of vigilance. The weight of history pressed upon me, heavy but tempered by the knowledge that we had survived. Finch stood slowly, gazing at the aligned fragments. "The conquered will return," he said. "They always do, but we will be ready. The scattered library is alive, and its guardians are eternal, and as long as we endure, no one can wield its power for destruction." I realized then that this was more than a battle over knowledge. It was a testament to human responsibility, to the choice of whether history becomes a weapon or a legacy. And as we left the chamber, ascending into the night above Istanbul, I understood the truth. The library is never truly lost. It waits, patient and vigilant, for those brave enough to protect it. The city above slept, blissfully unaware of the ancient war that had just been fought beneath its streets. But I knew the fragments, the codices, and the guardians of Alexandria were alive, and the story would continue, eternal, unresolved, and ever dangerous. And I would follow it, for as long as it demanded.